Okay, good morning to all of you. Whether this slide is visible? Yes. Anyone please respond? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So up to last class we have discussed this black box testing techniques, white box testing techniques. Also in the immediate class, those are coming under dynamic testing. Last class we have seen about static testing techniques such as code walkthrough, code inspection, clean room testing, etc. So today we'll see the next phase of testing. So that is called as software debugging. Okay. So by these testing techniques, once the errors are identified, what is the next step? The next step is it is necessary to identify what is the precise location of the errors, where the errors actually they are located, and then to fix those errors. So each there are several debugging approaches. Each debugging approach has its own advantages and disadvantages. Each debugging technique is useful in appropriate circumstances. Let's see today we'll discuss some of the particular debugging approaches. So today we'll discuss the following debugging approaches like the brute force method, symbolic debugger, backtracking, cause elimination method, program slicing. There are many other approaches. We'll only limit ourselves due to lack of time only these five debugging approaches. First we'll see the brute force method. This is the simplest method. This is the most common method used for debugging. Okay, this is the most common or popular method of debugging. But side by side, it is the least efficient method. Its efficiency is very less. Now let's see how does this brute force method works. The brute force method works like this. First, the program is loaded with some print statements. So while you are writing the program, periodically in between write enter sufficient printf statements. Maybe after every 2-3 lines, write down print statements. So and what is your objective? Your objective is to print the intermediate values. Before displaying the final result, in between the program, you introduce so many print statements to print the intermediate values. So with a hope that some of the printed values will help identify the error. So you should get this, you are finding out a very complex computation. So in order to, or before finding this complex computation, like a plus b minus c star d and to the power e like this, what you do, after every computation, like a plus b, show the intermediate value. Then b star d, again show the computation value, intermediate value. Then d to the power e, again show the computational value, the intermediate value. So after 2-3 steps, you try to print the intermediate values. So with a hope that some of these intermediate values, these printed intermediate values will help identify the error. Because if you will find out only printf statement at the end, then you are not getting the correct result. It is very difficult to locate where the error is. But instead of that, if you will write periodically some intermediate some printf statements to print the intermediate values in between after every 2-3 lines, then what will happen? You can easily identify, okay, these errors might be definitely these previous 2-3 statements. So it will be easier to locate the errors. So by loading these print statements in between the statements to print the intermediate values, this will help in an important way. This will help in displaying, in identifying the error. Okay, so here some of the printed values may help you, they will help you in identifying the error. This is the simplest method, just in inserting the printf statements in between the statements. So that's why this is the most common method, but this is least efficient method. If your program is 1 lakh lines of code, how many printf statements you will enter in between them? So this is the least efficient method. Next method we will see symbolic debugger. So the brute force approach, it can further made systematic by using a symbolic debugger. Since we have seen the brute force method is the least efficient method, so this brute force approach it becomes more systematic with the use of a symbolic debugger. You can use a symbolic debugger, and this will make the brute force method more systematic. So what is the symbolic debugger? The symbolic debuggers, they get their name for historical regions. Okay, due to some historical regions, they have got this name symbolic debugger. So early debuggers let you only see, if you see the early or the traditional debuggers, they will allow you only see the values from a program dump, which will determine which variable it corresponds to. So from the program dump, you can see the values, and this will determine which variable it corresponds to. This debugger, it is showing the value, this value corresponds to which variable, A or B or C, like that. So these early debuggers, they will allow you only see the values from a program dump, which will determine which variable it corresponds to. This value corresponds to which variable, that will be shown by this symbolic debugger, by this early debuggers. Now, using a symbolic debugger, what benefit you will get? Using a symbolic debugger, the values of different variables can be easily checked and modified. If there are many variables, then by using a symbolic debugger, the values of different variables, they can be easily checked, and not only that, the values of these different variables, they can be easily modified. So it is a single stepping procedure to execute one instruction at a time. Using symbolic debugger, it's a it's a single stepping procedure. At a time, only one instruction can be executed. So in this symbolic debugger, there is a provision. You can use breakpoints and watch points. You can set them to test the values of variables. So if there are different variables, you want to test the the values of the variables, whether they are showing the expected variables or not. You can insert, you can set breakpoints and watch points. So break, you might have already seen in switch in switch statement, you have already seen break statement. So similarly, in symbolic debugger, there is a provision where you can use on the breakpoints or break statements and watch points. Okay, they can be set to test the values of the different variables. So this is the advantage of symbolic debugger in comparison to the traditional debuggers. Next method we will see about backtracking. This is one of the most fairly common approaches. How does it work? Backtrack, already you have seen earlier in some of the previous subjects, how to backtrack or this backward traversal, etc. So let's see this backtracking. So this backtracking approach, it begins at the statement where an error symptom has been observed. That means where you are getting an error symptom. Starting from that, what you have to do? You have to trace backwards. Okay, the source code is traced backwards until the error is discovered. Suppose you are getting an error at line number 10. From line number 10, you go backward, you traverse backward till the source of the error is discovered. Okay, so this backtracking method, it starts at the statement where you are finding an error symptom, and then this source code, it is traversed backward. You have to traverse backward. You have to yes. Then the source code is traced backwards until the error is discovered. This is the simplest technique, that is called as backtracking. Now let's see a small example. Suppose a small program I have taken, and I am getting some error at this printf phase. What is the actual value of phase I am not getting? Some problem I am getting here, some error I am getting. So what I have to do? Simplest method, you can traverse backward. Either a simple graph you can draw for this program, or the printf to this, then j to the I, like this. All these statements you traverse from printf to this till getting the source, till getting the error identified or the error is discovered. Just simply backward from this desired point. Here it is printf statement, and you traverse backward till getting the location of the error. So this is how this backtracking approach works. Now let's see what is the problem with this backtracking approach. What are the limitations? I have already told you every approach has some advantages and some disadvantages. So unfortunately, as the number of source lines to be traced back increases, the number of potential backward paths increases, isn't it? If your program line is just 10 line, here it is only maybe within 10 lines, so I can easily traverse backward because very few paths are there. But if the program is of 1 lakh lines of code, there will be several backward paths. How many paths you will traverse? This will make the problem, this traversing process, very complex. So unfortunately, the number of source lines to be traced backward, to be traced back increases. Then what will happen? The number of potential, the backward paths to be traversed also increases, and it becomes unmanageably large for complex programs. For complex industrial programs having sizes of 1 lakh, 2 lakh, etc., this number of this backward paths will increase, and hence tracing backward also become very much tedious. The tracing backward to cover all the to trace backward to cover all the backward paths, it also becomes very much tedious. It also becomes very much complex. So that's why this method is also not applicable for complex for large complex industrial programs. So now let's see the next method. Next method is cause elimination method. So in this method, once a failure is observed, then what is happened? The symptoms of the failure are noted. Why a failure has occurred? What are the symptoms? Okay. So in this method, once a failure is observed, the symptoms of the failure is noted. The symptoms of the failure are noted. For example, one of the symptom might be certain variable is having a negative value, though it should be positive. A variable A, it should have a negative value, but it should be positive value, but it is showing negative value. So this is an failure. So this is an error. So why this variable A is showing negative value, even if it should show positive value? What is the cause? So that cause has to be find out. Okay. So this symptom is noted. Then determine a list of causes. So you see what you do. For each failure, you identify this could be the, because we do not know what is the exact problem. So from our previous experience, we can maintain a list of causes. This could be the possible causes for which this problem is occurring, for which this variable A is getting negative value. So prepare a list of causes from your experience. Determine a list of causes which could possibly have contributed to the error symptom. Okay. So in this cause elimination method, as its name suggests, cause, we have to find we have to determine a list of causes for a particular failure, for a particular problem, which could possibly have contributed to this error symptom. Then test cases are conducted to eliminate it. So after finding out, after determining the list of causes, then we can design test cases by using our methods that we have discussed: black box testing method, white box testing method, etc. Then test cases are designed to eliminate each of the causes. This cause elimination method, it's a related technique of identifying errors by examining error symptoms. It is called as software fault tree analysis. So this cause elimination method, it is a technique, or it is a related technique of finding or identifying errors by examining what? By examining the error symptoms. Examine the error symptom, analyze the error symptom, then you find out what could be the possible causes, and accordingly you design test cases to eliminate them. So this analysis is known as software fault tree analysis. That means for a particular software, for a particular program you are developing, construct a tree. That tree we call as software fault tree. Then you analyze the tree, why this error is happening, what could be the possible causes, then design the test cases to eliminate the causes. So this is how the cause elimination method it works. Then you will see the last technique, that is program slicing. This is almost a recent days technique many people are using nowadays. So this technique is similar to backtracking. Backtracking I have already told you, isn't it? How does the backtracking method work? So we start at the statement where an error symptom has been observed, and then we traverse backward until the error is discovered. This is how the backtracking method works. So this program slicing is a very similar method to backtracking. But what is the problem of backtracking? I have already told you. The problem of backtracking is that as the number of source lines increases, then what? The number of potential backward paths increases. There will be so many backward paths. And please imagine, and this will become unmanageable large for complex program. Please imagine you have developed a 1 lakh line program and you are getting at the line number last line. What you have to do? If we backward, should we backward traverse all the 1 lakh lines starting from the beginning end, because I am finding the error at the last line. The length of the program is 1 lakh lines long, 1 lakh lines of length. So shall I traverse from this 1 lakh line statement number 1 lakh to up to the 1. So how many paths I will get, how much time it will take. So the sort space becomes very much large because there will be so many paths, present. So the amount of searching time will become large. So the search space is very large, which is very much difficult to traverse. Okay, it is very much difficult to traverse all the search paths. So this thing leads to the idea of program slicing. If somehow we can reduce the size of the search space, then we can search the faulty statement only with a very few amount of time. This is possible by using program slicing method. So as I have already told you, this program slicing method is similar to backtracking, but this here the sort space is reduced by defining slices. This in case of backtracking, the sort space is very large. It is very large. So here in the program slicing method, the sort space is reduced by defining the slices. So so what do you mean by slice? A program slice, or simply you can as a slice. A slice is defined for a particular variable at a particular statement, and this program slice is defined as a set of source lines preceding this statement which can influence the value of the variable. I am repeating again. A slice is defined for a particular variable which is at a particular statement. So if your statement is x is equal to b plus c, I want to define the slice for variable x, or suppose line number 10. So a slice is defined which can influence the value of the variable. Suppose you have written a program of 10 lines. Last line is printf s. So I have to see that the value of s is influenced by what variables which are present before this last line. This example let us take. Here we have written printf s. So what I have to do in slicing, I have to traverse from s, but I have to see that only I should not traverse all the lines previous to that. I have to only find out this variable of s is influenced by what statements previously present before the print statement. You can see that s is affected by obviously where the value of s is defined. Here s is equal to this. But since it is in a loop, so next value of loop is determined by I plus plus. So I have to go for this I plus plus, and then I value is defined where I is equal to 1, and this loop is controlled by this while statement. So you can see that obviously value of s is affected by what statements? I plus plus, s is equal to s plus I, while statement, and I is equal to 1. So these 4 statements affect the value of s. So what are they? I is equal to 1, while statement, s is equal to s plus I, and I plus plus. So whenever if I am finding an error at the printf value, I must check for only 4 statements, this I and I is equal to 1, while statement, s equal to s plus I, and I plus plus. So that means any error if we found for at this printf statement, so this may be due to these 4 lines. So I have to traverse backward. I have to find only those statements, those 4 statements which may affect, which may influence the variable s at the last line, and hence we are getting an error. So this is how, instead of searching all the lines, we can restrict to only those statements which are influencing the value of a variable at a particular statement, and this will known as the program slice. I will explain with some more examples. So what I have already told you, a slice is defined for a particular variable at a particular statement, and it is the set of source lines preceding this statement which can influence the value of the variable. So here I have already told you our slicing criterion now this statement printf s with respect to variable s. I have to find out what statements are affecting. I have seen here that I plus plus, s is equal to s plus I, while statement, and I is equal to 1. These four statements only affecting s. So the slice of this line number with respect to variable s is it consists of four statements. I is equal to 1, while I is less than equal to 10, s is equal to s plus I, and I plus plus. In this way, we find out what the slices. So a slice is defined for a particular variable at a particular statement. It is the set of source lines preceding this statement which can influence the value of the variable. I am now defining with a I am now defining program slices in a formal way. The slice of a program with respect to program point P means program statement P. Slice of a program with respect to program point P and variable X. It is defined as what? It consists of all the statements and all the predicates that might affect the value of X at program point P. Okay. So if we have written a program at program point all the statements and predicates that might affect the value of the variable x defined or used at program point or the program statement P. So this tuple, that is the program statement number P, and the variable x that is defined or used at P is called as slicing criterion. So for while you are finding out the slices, you have to first determine the slicing criterion. For which slicing criterion you are finding out the slice? It is consist of it is a tuple px where p is the program statement number, x is the program slicing criterion, x is the variable. So this is known as the slicing criterion. This tuple px is known as slicing criterion. Please remember, if the slice will change, if the slicing criterion is changed, then the whole program slice will be changed. That means if the statement number and the variable, if they are changed, then accordingly the program slice will also be changed. Okay, this is the definition of program slicing. Let us quickly take a small example and find out the slice for a program. Okay, so this slice, it has come from the what you might have seen the breads. What is it written? Slice it, because the bread it cut into pieces. It is known as slice bread. So similarly here in the program, what we will do, we will slice in. So that's why this is known as program slicing. Okay, I'm taking a small example. So this is a small example I have taken, which is finding out the value of sum and the value of I. I want to find out the program slice, a backward slice with respect to slicing criterion 12i. What is 12 here? Line number 12. This is a printf statement. What is I? Variable I that is used. Okay. So in order to find this slicing, what you have to do? First, you have to number the statement. How you can number the statement? You have already known in several compilers, or while you are writing the programs, automatically they are numbered. Otherwise, you have to physically number them. This numbered program is known as instrumented code. So first, I have to instrument the code. I have to number it. So I have number like this, and then I have to find out the slicing criterion. Which, with respect to which slicing criterion you want to find out the slice. So I want to find out the slice with respect to variable I, which is used at line number 12. So my slicing criterion is 12i. If you want that I want to calculate the slice for variable sum, used at line number 11. So the criterion will be 11, sum. So let us see 12 with respect to slicing criterion 12i, how I can get this. That means what I have to find out, which statements previous to line number 12, they are affecting the value of I used at line number 12. Let's see. So basically I want to print the value of I. So I value where it is defined, you can see I value, it is incremented here plus plus I. Then where it is defined, you can see it is defined at I is equal to 1. And this is used as a loop control variable at the while statement, while I is less than equal to 10. So you can see that only those 4 statements are affecting this slice. I is equal to 1, while I is less than equal to 10, plus plus I, then this printf. So the slice with respect to 12i consists of this step. Of course, this see by default main and the variable declarations will be there. So either you may include or you may not include, because by default they are present. I have to see the other important statement. So now for here my slice will consist of maybe line number 1, line number 5, line number 6, line number 9, and line number 12. So these statements will constitute the program slice. So now you see the short space is tremendously reduced. I do not want to traverse all the 12 lines. Only these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Only those 5 lines will constitute the slice. So now you see the short space is tremendously reduced. So similarly, if you will find out the slice with respect to slicing criterion 11 sum, you can accordingly find out. The slices will include what? Line number 11, then line number 9, then line number 8, then 6, 5, and sum is equal to 0. In this way, you can find out the program slice with respect to slicing criterion 11 sum. Now let's see, this is a small program. Just looking at the program or traversing backward by seeing the program, I can find out the slice. But if the program is a large program, I can also look at this and can find this so easily. So what is the method to this? So the method is like this. First, given a program, you number it or you instrument the code. This is known as the instrumented code. Then for every program, draw a graph. That graph will call as program dependence graph, consisting of 2 dependencies. We have already seen earlier control flow graph, but here I want to draw a program dependence graph. That means it consists of 2 types of dependencies: control dependency and data dependency. Identify what are the data dependencies among the statements, what are the control dependencies among the statements. Then if you can draw the control program dependence graph, then slicing is very easy. Just traverse backward. You have known all the backward traversal algorithm, just you have to traverse backward. So now let us take this simple program and try to draw the graph. You can see the program starts with main. So I have drawn main, line number 1 is main. Then you can see that what are the other programs, other statements. 2 is a bracket, I have left it. 3 is a declaration, 4 declaration. You can see the 4 is sum is equal to 0 initialization. Obviously, you can, and 5 is initialization, I is equal to 1. 6 is while statement. You can see that the 3, 4, 5, 6, they are control dependent on what? Main, because from main, the control will flow to 3, 4, 5, 6. So line numbers 3, 4, 5, 6 are control dependent on main. So I have drawn edges from 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 to 5, 1 to 6. Its meaning is that this, you can see the blue arrows are control dependent edges and red arrows are data dependent edges. I can see that 3 is control dependent on 1, 4 is control dependent on 1, 5 is control dependent on 1, 6 is control dependent on 1. And what are 3, 4, 5, 6? I have already 3 is a variable declaration, 4 is initialization, 5 is initialization, 6 is a while statement. Now while I will come to 8 and 9, you can see they are not control dependent on main, they are control dependent on the while statement, isn't it? Because they are included in the loop. So 8 and 9 are control dependent on 6. Let's see how I can represent. So 8 and 9, these statements are control dependent on what? 6. So I have to draw an edge from 6 to 8. I have to draw an edge from 6 to 9. This means that 8 is control dependent on 6 and 9 is control dependent on 6. Okay. Then what is left? After 8, 9, 11, 12. 11, 12, they are coming out, they are outside scope of the while statement. So they are control dependent on what? They are control dependent on main. So I have to draw another control dependent edge from 1 to 11 and 1 to 12. Let's see, 1 to 11 and 1 to 12. All right. So in this way, I have first drawn all the control dependence edges. Now I have to see, is there any data dependency? Yes, let's see what are the data dependencies. You can see I is equal to 1 set at line number 5. Then this value of I is it is used where? Line number 6. And that means this value of I is equal to 1 will be used at line number 6. That means line number 6 is data dependent on line number 5. So I have to draw an edge from 5 to 6. See, 5 to 6 I have drawn. This red edge is data dependence edge because the value of I is defined as equal to 1 and it is used at this while statement. So 6 is data dependent on 5. Then what is happening? Other dependencies, you can see sum is equal to sum plus 1, but sum is initially defined where? Line number 4. So there must dependence edge from 4 to 8. That means 8 is data dependent on 4. So I have added this. 8 is data dependent on 4, a red edge. So this is data dependency. Similarly, you can find out other data dependencies like plus I, where this by I value is using from 5 because I is equal to 1 here. So 9 is data dependent on 5. Let's see, 9 is data dependent on 5. Where is, yes, this an arrow I have added. 9 is data dependent on 5, isn't it? Not only that, you can see that I is equal to I plus 1. So this is in a loop. So each time, next iteration, the previous value will be used. So line number 9 is also dependent on itself. It's a loop. Line number 9 is also dependent on itself. Here I have made a loop. 9 is also dependent on 9. Similarly, 8, sum is equal to sum plus 1. It is in a loop. The previous value, first value will be from line number 4. I have added from 8 to 4. 8 to 4. But next values where it will get? Next values, again it will get from what? Same value. Previous value of sum will be used. So 8 again it is dependent on itself. 8 again it is dependent on itself. And what are the other data dependencies you can see? That sum value, where it will get? Printf sum. This value will be coming from 8. And similarly printf this value of I, where it will get? It will get the value from 9. So there will be an edge from what? 8 to 11 as well as 9 to 12. Let's see. 8 to 11, yes, because this value of sum will be printed here. This value of I, which is shown as 9, it will be printed here. So 9 to 12. Similarly, another value you can see that 12 printf I. And if this condition is not satisfied, then the value of I will be printed. So there you will an edge from 5 to 12. So data depends edge from 5 to 12. Okay. And similarly, you can find out and all those results. So similarly, you discuss all those dependencies. Okay. So here you have found out all the data dependencies and the control dependencies and drawn the graph. Once the graph is ready, then the slice is easy. What is my slicing criterion here? 12 high. That means with respect to 12 for the variable I want to compute the slice. So now let's see. This is 12. What I have to do? Simply backward traversal. And which nodes you will reach? Just mark them. From 12 I can start. Where I can reach? Line number 9. So mark it. Another which edge I can get? Line number 5. Mark it. Then from where you have reached, again traverse backward. From line 9, let us backward traverse. From 9 where I can get? 9 to 5. Isn't it? Mark it. Then what you can do? Just 6 where you can okay, from 12 we have reached at 9, then 12 we have reached. You can total through this any arrow you can take, control dependence or data dependence. From 9 I can reach at 6. From 9 you can reach at 5. So mark both these things, both these nodes 5 and 6. And from 6 where I can go to 5. It is already marked. From 9 through this control dependence I can reach at 1. So only these edges we can reach from what? Line number 12. Those I have made as yellow color. So the program slice with respect to line number 12 and variable I consists of what statements? Line number 1, 5, 6, 9 and 12. That I have made here bold. 1, 5, 6, 9 and 12. In this way, given a program, you can find out the what slices. These arrow directions, it can be either downward, it can be either upward, but it has to be consistent throughout the graph. Don't mix some are downward and some are upward. So you make the directions consistently. You can use what in this notation downward, or you can use also in the direction upward, but the meaning should remain consistent, meaning should be same. Okay, this is how you can find out the program slices. Okay, so this thing can be automated. There are several tools are available. You can also write a program to construct the graph and then traverse the graph so that you can find out the slice. This is a research area, and nowadays people are using how to find out the slices of object-oriented programs, because so many methods are there, object-oriented features are there. How to find out these what slices of aspect-oriented program, feature-oriented program. So these things will not discuss. Similarly, another example program I have taken, and with respect to line number 9, variable I have found out the program slice which are made as red colors. You can verify yourself. So now let's quickly look at the types of slices. There are important. First, we'll see two important slices: static slice and dynamic. While you are computing the slices, if the statements that may affect the value of a variable at a program point for all possible executions. All possible execution means whatever input you give, if the slice remains same, we call it a static slice. So static slice means statements that may affect the value of a variable at a program point for all possible executions for all inputs. If the slice remains same, then we call it as a static slice. What is dynamic slice? Statements that actually affect value of a variable at a program point for that particular execution. That means for a specific input value, the slice is changing. Then we call a dynamic slice. The slice, the input changes, the slice also changes. That is called as dynamic slice. Example you would take if statement. In the if statement, there are two parts, then part and else part. For some input, then part will be executed. For some input, else part executed. If your slice remains for the then part as well as else part, that is a static slice. But if you give say n is equal to the then part is executed, so slice will be different. If you give say n is equal to 10, suppose else part is executed, so the slice will be different. So then that we call as dynamic slice. So when the slices will change as the values of the input change, then we call the slice as dynamic slice. Another category is backward slice and forward slice. In backward slice, the statements that might have affected the variables at a program point. So which statements have affected the variable at a program point we call backward slice. So this example, two examples I have taken backward slice because I am finding out what statements are affecting line number 12. Those are all previous. So what statements are affecting line number 12 are affecting variable I at line number 12. These are called as backward slices. So these two examples I have taken, these are backward slices. What is a forward slice? So backward slice means the statements that might have affected the variable at a program point. Forward slice means the statements that might be affected by the variable at a program point. Which statements might be affected by the variable at a program point, that is called a forward slice. Let's quickly take a small example. So here suppose same program I have taken, I want to find out the slice with respect to 5i and a forward slice. That means line number, that variable I defined at line number 5, it is affecting what other statements following it. So these statements are called as forward slice. So the forward slice with respect to slicing criterion 5i are line number 5, 6, 8, 9, 11, 12. So these programs, sorry, these statements will be affected by variable I defined at line number 5. So this will constitute the forward slice. So the statements marked as bold will constitute the forward slice. Okay. So this is about the forward slice. One more type is there, intra-procedural slice versus inter-procedural slice. So what we have done, so intra-procedural slice means for programs having only one procedure, where you are written only one procedure, we call as intra-procedural slice. So these two examples we have taken, only one method is there, main. So that's why this is what intra-procedural, not applicable for object-oriented programs, because in object-oriented programs there are more than one procedures or more than one methods. For that we have to go for inter-procedural slice. Inter-procedural slice means when you are computing the slice for programs having more than one procedure. When in your program more than one procedure there, you have to find out the interprocedural slice. The slice computer is known as interprocedural slice. So the interprocedural slice is applicable for object-oriented programs. So this is little bit about fundamental of program slicing we have seen. This is a research area. Will not go into deeper. We'll stop here about program slices. Now, there are various applications of slicing. So program slicing technique can be used for debugging. This is an application I have already told you, because if you can know, I have already told you, if you want to compute the, if you are getting the error at line number 9, in order to find out where the error might lie, I have to only find out the slice with respect to 9i, so that I can know that the slice, the error might be present at line number 2 or 3 or 5 or 7, nothing beyond that. So in this way, program slicing technique will help you to find, it will help you in debugging, it will help in finding out the location of the error. So this is one application of program slicing, that is debugging. Program slicing can also be used for program understanding, testing, software maintenance, complexity measurement, program integration, reverse engineering, software use, etc. So these are all the research areas. How slicing can be used for each application. We'll skip those things. Those who will do want to research in this area, they can see more details about program slicing. Now let's quickly finish. So some guidelines you will see for debugging. Debugging guidelines. Debugging usually requires a thorough understanding of the program design. In order to perform debugging, you have to thoroughly understand the program design. Debugging may sometimes require full redesign of the system if debugging is becoming complex, if it is becoming difficult. Debugging may sometimes require the full design or whole redesign of the system. A common mistake novice programmers often make is that not fixing the error, but they try to fix the error symptoms. Okay, that which should not be done. So a common mistake the novice programmers often make is that not fixing the error, but the error symptoms. They try to fix the error symptoms. Actually, they should fix the errors. They are not trying to fixing the errors, but they are trying to fix the error symptoms. So this is a common mistake which the novice programmers often make. So few guidelines. So that's why the first guidelines say that try to fix the error symptoms, not the not fix the errors. Be aware of the possibility an error correction may introduce new errors. Obviously, while you are correcting one error, this may introduce another 2 errors. That is known as side effect. You have already seen about normal your compilation. So please be aware of that. After every round of error fixing, regression testing must be carried out. So what is regression testing? Regression testing is a testing which ensures that while you are correcting some errors, no new errors have been introduced. We'll take special classes on regression testing. So after every round of error fixing, so you must carry out regression testing. So let's see what analysis tools are there. These are the program analysis tools. We'll take 2 to 3 minutes more. Program analysis tool is an automated tool which takes the program source code as input. Then it produces several reports regarding several important characteristics of the program. What type of reports these program analysis tools may produce? The program analysis tools may produce reports such as what is the size of your program, what is the complexity of your program, what is the adequacy of commenting, whether you have properly commented or not, the what you have not, whether you have introduced appropriate number of comment lines in the program or not, adherence to programming standards. Last class we have discussed about some standards, so whether you are properly adhered to the programming standards or not. So those types of reports can be generated by program analysis. Some program analysis tools, they can produce reports regarding the adequacy of the test cases. We are designing test cases, whether your test cases are sufficient or not. What is the coverage? You require 90% suppose coverage. Your test cases are showing only 80%. So this coverage is not adequate. So some program analysis tools produce reports regarding the adequacy of the test cases. There are 2 important categories of program analysis tools: static analysis tools and dynamic analysis tools. What does this static analysis tools they do? What do the static analysis tools do? Static analysis tools, they assess the properties of a program without executing it. That's why the name is static. So these static analysis tools, they assess, they evaluate the properties of a program without executing it. They analyze the source code and provide analytical conclusions. So the static analysis tools, they analyze the given source code and provide some analytical conclusions. What kind of conclusions the static analysis tools may provide? So the examples of conclusions that static analysis tools may provide are as follows, like whether proper coding standards have been adhered to or not, whether comment lines you have introduced, those are adequate or not, that is program is commenting is adequate or not. These tools may also give some report on this tool also may provide you some information such as the programming errors. It may provide some information about the programming errors such as whether some uninitialized variables you have used, that means variables you have used without initializing them. If there is some mismatch between the actual and formal parameters, if some variable you have declared but they are never used, etc. So those kinds of programming errors can be those types of programming errors can be provided by the static analysis tools. And code walkthrough, code inspection, we have also seen earlier. Code walkthrough and code inspection can also be considered as static analysis method, because here you do not want to execute the program. Here code walkthrough and code inspection can also be considered as static analysis methods. However, the term static program analysis is generally used for automated analysis tools. So normally we do not actually say that code walkthrough and code inspection, they are static analysis methods. But normally we say that the static program analysis means they are used for the automated for the static automated analysis tools. So let's quickly look at the dynamic analysis tools. I have already told you dynamic analysis tools means we have to execute the dynamic program analysis tools. They require the program to be executed, then its behavior should be recorded. The dynamic analysis tools produce reports such as what is the extent of coverage achieved, whether your test cases achieve 90% statement coverage or 95% statement coverage or 98% statement coverage. Also adequacy of test cases, whether the test cases are adequate to test your software or not. So those types of reports can be provided by dynamic analysis tools. Okay, we'll not discuss more about dynamic analysis tools. Those things you can see from book or these internet sources. So this is something about these program analysis tools. We have seen two types of program analysis tools: static analysis tools and dynamic analysis tools. So let's see the summary. Today we have discussed different debugging approaches. We have discussed first the brute force method, then the symbolic debugger, then the backtracking method, then cause elimination method, and program slicing method. Each method is having its own advantages and disadvantages. We have also presented some debugging guidelines, just like as try to find out the error symptom, not the fixing the errors. We have explained the program analysis tools. We have seen there are two types of program analysis tools. One is static analysis tools, where the program has not to be executed, and in dynamic analysis tool, where the program has to be executed, then it will generate some reports. This is something about the debugging approaches and this program analysis tools. We have taken it from Rajiv Mal's software engineering book, I think chapter 10. Please check. Thank you very much. This is something about the debugging approaches and the program analysis tools. Any doubt, please? Those who are having classes, they may leave. Otherwise, those who are having doubts may ask. This is a little bit theoretical portion, but we have seen all the fundamentals. Those who will do research on this, they may go into deeper. Now, any doubts, please? If there are any doubts, you can ask. I will put the slide immediately in the Microsoft Teams. You can read. If there are no more doubts, we can stop here.